the early game on the card in the championship weekend festivities. I don't know if you're watching this game or not, maybe not. Miles Sanders rumbling and stumbling on a couple of short touchdown runs. Philadelphia had 4 rushing touchdowns, and the Eagles fly into the Super Bowl nest. They forced both of San Francisco's quarterbacks out of the game with injury, and they got help from the referees in beating the battered and war-torn 49ers 31-7 in the NFC Championship game. So the Eagles, who won the Super Bowl 5 years ago with Doug Peterson and Nick Foles, will now try to do it again behind the duo of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. And so while Philadelphia is off to Super Bowl 57 in Arizona, where they will take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, the better story is in the losing locker room. So let us discuss the question here. Who is the scapegoat for the Niners? Who's the GOAT? The scapegoat. I've got pegboard, menu, and bottled up. And we will lock all of these random things together, and we are going to make a sour dough bread loaf that's gone stale, because that's the Niners. They're stale. They've gone stale. All right, so number one. Number one. The Niners were KO'd early in this game, and you can say, well, I thought it was over immediately when Brock Purdy left the game, and that's it. He actually came back into the game, but it's not the best team who wins. It's the healthiest team. That's always been the argument in the NFL and basketball and baseball and all those sports. Normally that's the case, but this was a snap, crackle, pop situation. Brock Purdy, the storybook ride, came to a crashing ending. The last pick in the NFL draft, Mr. Irrelevant, and he had won his first 7 starts for the Niners. We know the story coming in. It was hyped up, got a lot of attention, and he ended up running into a fireball named Hassan Reddick, who knocked him out early in the first quarter. Purdy was forced back into the game in the second half, despite a bum elbow, could not throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field. Josh Johnson, who also blows, came into the game. He left with a concussion. So imagine, if you will, if you're into like board games, you know that pegboard from the iconic Milton Bradley game? Kyle Shanahan there on the sideline saying, "You sank my battleship! How dare you sank my battleship!" And you toss in some really funky-smelling officiating, and you end up with the perfect storm in this one. From Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo to Brock Purdy and Josh Johnson, torpedoed the Niners. They go down. How about the story? Now, a buddy of mine texted me, because I was, during the game, I'm texting some friends, some buddies of mine. I'm going back and forth with a friend of mine. Buddy's like, oh, no. I said it's over because when Purdy got hurt, I said, that's it. I said, I spent all week handicapping the game with Brock Purdy playing. I said, the Niner defense can contain the Eagles, but with Brock Purdy gone, that's it. They're done. He said, no. He said, the Niners offense, it's not the quarterback. Remember, it's the play calling by Shanahan. It's just get the ball out to Kittle and McCaffrey, and that's it. It's the drawing up of the plays. And I said, okay, sure. So then Josh Johnson came in. He knocked on the door, and then he got knocked out with a concussion. But before he got knocked out, he looked terrible. So there's a reason he's been like a military brat in pro football, bouncing around from team to team to team to team. The guy was rattled. Yeah, he also had his defining play in the NFL, the fumble before halftime with just a few seconds to go, and being very passive, meekly attempting to get on the football, which was slightly better than Cam Newton, if you're old enough to remember when the then Carolina Panthers star had his defining moment in the NFL against the Broncos in the Super Bowl, when he decided that the football was like a live hand grenade and he wanted nothing to do with it after the fumble in that Super Bowl. All right, now, page 2. Did the officials meddle with the outcome of the NFC Championship game, a game that was a blowout? So I'm nodding my head yes. Now, it's going to be lost in the shuffle. Since the game was not close, the low-information fan, the uneducated fan, will not make a big deal about this, and they'll say, oh, you're just a sour grapes person. It will not rise to a war tribunal. like we're going to get from Cincinnati and Kansas City. See, that was a close game. There was some funky smelling officiating in that game, and now everyone's up in arms. But since Philadelphia won the game by a wide margin, this will be lost in the shuffle because when it rains, it pours. The Eagles were on the power play in this game. You saw it. You know what I'm talking about here. For the balance of the game, Philly decided to go for it on 4th and 3. This was, to me, the defining moment early in the game. 4th and 3 from the Niners' 35-yard line, less than 5 minutes into the game. You remember what happened? You were watching the game? So Jalen Hurts scrambles out to the left. He then tosses the football up to Devontae Smith, who at first glance looked like he made this one-handed razzle-dazzle catch for 29 yards, all the way down to the Eagles' 6-yard line. My God, what a play. Unbelievable. However, the replays showed the ball was clearly bobbled. It hit the ground. Now, I will give Devontae Smith credit. He realized that was not a kosher play. He realized that he didn't catch the ball, so he hurried up. It appears the Eagles also realized that they got away with one, and everyone lined up. They ran a play. They eventually scored a touchdown on that drive. Now, is it true that 49er coach Kyle Shanahan should have, could have, and would have tossed a challenge flag in that situation? Yes, all of that is true. Is it also true that the officials should have, could have, and would have gotten the call right in real time, stopped it, and then the Eagles would not have gained the first down? They would have turned it over on downs. Thumbs up on that. The reason this looks terrible, the NFL, you watch all these games, and what does the NFL love to tell us? And they pass this on to their pigeons, their messenger pigeons in the media. They're very braggadocious about what they call the replay assist setup in New York. Now, that means that they can run an expedited review on every play from all angles in real time. So it should not have had to go to Shanahan to make the call. It was obvious. If you look at the other angles, it wasn't a catch. Should not have taken that long for the replay review system to do their job and make the correct call. They didn't do it. And as a result, the Eagles were allowed to go up. The Zebras allowed the Eagles to run a quick play, swallowing the whistle and giving the Eagles the edge. They go down, they score a touchdown. And it wasn't just that. The Eagles picked up, and I'm really only looking at the first half because I feel like it was over after that. But Philly picked up 26% of their first downs in the first half via penalty. 1 in 4 via penalty. 4 of the 15 in the first half. For the game, the Niners were called for 11 penalties, dinging them for 81 yards, but 4 of them on one drive. And keep in mind, though, is this normal? No. Over the last month of the season, the Niners were called for an average of 2.7 penalties per game. All of a sudden, the biggest game these guys have played this year, they get called for 11 penalties. The last month, 2.7. It was a 7-7 game with 3 minutes. We talked about this in a previous hour, but it was a 7-7 game with 3 minutes left in the first half. The Eagles had the ball at midfield. The officials gave Philadelphia, after that, 2 first downs on penalty, and Josh Johnson fumbled, and by the time we got to halftime, it was 21-7. That's it. Turn out the lights. The party's over. Now, there was also a roughing the kicker on the Niners. That's another one of those calls, El Stinko. The roughing the kicker call on the Niners. The player for the Niners was shoved into the kicker by the Eagles' backup tight end, Jack Stoll. Shoved him. And so that was another nail in the coffin. So I also read, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I read it on the internet, so it must be true, that the Eagles had 7 games officiated by John Hussey, and they were 7-0 in those games. So maybe they just happen to work out that way, or maybe there's something going on. I don't know. Tim Donaghy's special, and every time somebody says, "Oh, that never happens," we always bring up Tim Donaghy. And by the way, we should also point out Tim Donaghy was not alone. He was the one that was the fall guy for that. But many people who were around in those days believe that there were other officials who were also involved in that. And the NBA at the time was like, no. We're just going to have one guy. He'll be the fall guy. We'll move on. All right, final point. So what does all this – the Eagles won the game. Fine, they blew out the 49ers. They win because of injury. Fine. What does it say about the Eagles with Jalen Hurts? So I was not overly impressed. I got to tell you, I handicapped the game, whatever that's worth. Who cares? Who am I? But the Niners defense, I thought, played very well in the game. And if anything, the word I would use is beneficiary, that Jalen Hurts was the beneficiary. He didn't play well. That sounds outrageous to say. The Eagles won the game 31-7. I was not impressed with Jalen Hurts. The Eagles never trailed in the game, but regardless of that, let me make my elevator pitch that Jalen Hurts was held in check by the 49er defense, that the Niner defense did that job. Philadelphia, they had less than 270 yards of offense. They also got 81 yards via penalty. 81 yards via penalty. They had averaged 390 yards per game, third best in the regular season, 390.6 per game. And they had over 100 yards less, over 120 yards less in this game. And Hurts, as a passer, the argument that had been made that against better defenses, this gimmicky offense would not work is accurate. Jalen Hurts averaged less than 5 yards per pass against the Niners defense. Did not throw for a touchdown, had a passer rating below 75. And it's not like he ran wild. He ran 11 times. Some of those were just barely across the line of scrimmage because the defense was monitoring his movements. But 11 times he was credited with 11 runs for 39 yards, 3.5 yards per rush. He did have a touchdown. But even that is misleading because 14 of those yards came on one run. The other 10 times, 25 yards total. So he was bottled up. Jalen Hurts was bottled up. It was a pedestrian performance by the Eagle quarterback, and there are stories out that Philadelphia is going to give him a monster contract, and he certainly earned it from the regular season. But if you judge him off his play in the NFC Championship game, I would hold off on that. I wouldn't go gaga for that. I wouldn't go crazy on that one. I would not. All right, it is the Ben Maller Show, and let's hear from some of the participants in this game. What do you say? We'll start with Kyle Shanahan, and he had Purdy out there, and then he had Josh Johnson out there, and Josh Johnson had a reversal of fortune while he was in the game. Here's Kyle Shanahan on his backup.
He didn't get to do much. I mean, he came in and threw that slant to Debo, and they were going to get into 2 minutes, and we were just going to go to another screen, and they ended up mishandling the snap, which was obviously not a good play because they ended up getting in, and they got 7 more from it. And then he got hurt on the first series the next time, so Josh didn't get to do much either.
Yes, 0, Zippo. Here's more. How about Brock Purdy? And he was down for the count early in the game. He got a bum elbow. He came back in and just handed the ball off 95% of the time. But here is Brock Purdy on what happened to his arm.
My arm just felt like it stretched out. Just felt like really a lot of just shocks all over from my elbow down to my wrist, front and back. Just pain, really, all over.
Pain is the name of the game. All right, here's more on Purdy again, pointing out that he could not do a damn thing.
I've been throwing after the hit occurred on the sideline just to see where I was at. But even in those throws, it was painful. And so I couldn't throw anything probably over 10 yards, 5 yards. That's why we just had some screens. That was really our only option when I went back in.
So the Niners are done. Is that guy, Brock Purdy, the Niners quarterback next season? He's the starting quarterback? I'm betting on yes because he works cheap, and the Niners, if they want to keep everyone else on the team, although I am a salary cap truther, but it's the easiest avenue, and to keep Brock Purdy means that you don't have to do some more shenanigans with the salary cap and move some stuff around. Anyway, if you want to talk about any of that, you can join us here. The Eagles are on to the Super Bowl in Arizona against the Kansas City Chiefs. Super Bowl 57 in the Valley of the Sun in less than 2 weeks' time.